If you've been scrolling through endless gaming PC builds, watching YouTubers hype the latest RTX cards, and still feel a knot in your stomach wondering whether any of them actually fit your desk, your budget, and the way you play, this review is here to cut through the noise. I've spent the last few days setting up the Velztorm LCD white Praetix custom-built Y70, swapping out monitors, testing a couple of AAA titles, and even firing up a few creative apps to see how it behaves when you're not just chasing frame rates. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of gamer who ends up buying a pre-built like this. If you're someone who loves the thrill of a fresh-out-the-box machine, doesn't want to wrestle with BIOS settings, and would rather spend your evenings actually playing than researching voltage tables, the Praetix hits a sweet spot. It also appeals to creators who need that extra GPU horsepower for video rendering without having to buy a separate workstation. On the flip side, if you thrive on tinkering, enjoy swapping out parts for marginal gains, or are chasing the absolute cheapest performance per dollar, you'll probably feel the price pinches a bit. The first thing you notice when you unbox the Praetix is the aesthetic. The white chassis with a 360mm liquid-cooled AIO and subtle RGB accents feels more like a modern art piece than a typical gamer's tower. In a room where your monitor already takes center stage, that clean look can blend in without screaming gamer cave. The build isn't just about looks, though. The 1000W power supply gives the system headroom for the RTX 5070 and the overclocked i9-14900K without throttling under sustained loads. I ran a marathon session of Cyberpunk 2077 at 144 Hz with ray tracing on, and the power draw plateaued well within the PSU's capacity, meaning you won't be hearing the fans spin up to a deafening whine as the system fights for juice. Performance-wise, the RTX 5070 is positioned as a step above the RTX 4080 in many benchmark tables, and in practice the difference shows up when you push texture quality to ultra while keeping DLSS at performance mode. In Elden Ring I saw a steady 138 frames per second at 1440p, and in Microsoft Flight Simulator the frame count hovered around 80 frames per second with high detail scenery. Those numbers translate to smooth gameplay, but the real test is how the system behaves when you hop between games or drop into a 4K streaming session. The 32GB of DDR5 RAM keeps multitasking fluid. Loading a massive mod pack in Skyrim while streaming on Twitch didn't cause any stutter, and the 2TB NVMe SSD shaved seconds off load times compared with older SATA drives. For a creator, opening Adobe Premiere with a 4K timeline and rendering a short clip took roughly the same time as a mid-range workstation I've used for years. Now, the hidden trade-offs. The Praetix is a white tower, which is great for a sleek setup, but that finish can show dust and fingerprints more readily than a matte black chassis. The front panel is minimalistic, offering only a power button and a USB-C port, so you'll need to reach around for the other USB-A ports and the headphone jack tucked on the side. That isn't a deal-breaker, but it does mean you'll want a well-organized desk. Another point is the cooling configuration. The 360mm AIO runs at a respectable noise level during idle around 30 dB, but under heavy loads it climbs to the low 40s. If you're in a shared living space or have a home office where quiet matters, you might want to keep the volume knob turned down or consider a case fan curve tweak. The price tag for this machine sits in the premium bracket, and that's where the value conversation gets nuanced. You're paying for the convenience of a fully assembled system, the warranty from a reputable seller, and the fact that the components are already balanced for optimal performance. You won't have to spend extra on a separate cooling loop, a high-capacity PSU, or a second SSD later on. However, the same raw specs could be assembled for a similar cost if you sourced each part yourself and were comfortable with building. So the value is really about time saved and peace of mind, rather than a pure hardware discount. Who should walk away from this review with a buy? If you're a mid-range to high-end gamer who wants 1440p or 4K performance without the headache of part compatibility, or a content creator who needs a solid GPU and CPU combo for editing and rendering, the Praetix delivers the experience you expect from a high-end machine right out of the box. It also suits people who appreciate a clean aesthetic that won't clash with a minimalist workstation setup. Who should skip it? If you're on a tight budget, if you enjoy the hobby of building and customizing, or if you need a machine that can be easily upgraded every year without swapping out a massive power supply, you'll probably find more satisfaction in a DIY build. Also, if absolute silence is a priority, you might want